Hello, and welcome to episode 3 of the Tainted Lands, Scourge of Antremoor. I am RJ Cresswell, and I'm the Dungeon Master. Before we jump into tonight's session, I want everyone to take a moment to introduce yourselves and your character. Also tell us about one scar your character has and how they got it. It could be physical, emotional, however you want to approach that. And David, we'll start off with you tonight.
Okay. I'm David Wood. I'm playing Eldon, a forest gnome druid. And after leaving his small community of hidden folk, he was called to a deep mountain grove tended by the trolls, who are actually earth elementals. And there he learned the teachings of the old ways. Through about 60 years of meditation and contemplation, there were deep secrets of this world revealed to him, ones that shook him to his very core. And what he saw about the future of this world scared him. He saw great decay, and even to this day, it's what drives him. So he left his grove, and he was seeking heroes to help save these tainted lands.
Okay, thank you. Set.
So Ken was kind of not really all that scarred until he got to Antremoor, and they saw that freaky will-o'-the-wisp with a freaky little kid space in it. Now he's got kind of a little mental scar there, and it just keeps prompting him to learn how to be more prepared for things. So they've just had a new battle, and he's never killed anybody before, and he still technically hasn't. We'll see how this plays out for him this time.
Okay.
Currently getting scarred.
All right, thank you. Elizabeth.
Hello, I'm Elizabeth. I'm playing Chunk. It's a wrinkly, old, grainy goblin. She is a monk. Has a scar on her left forearm that sort of starts as a round and then comes down from some very hot soup that sticks heads through.
So I missed some of that. I think you said it was from some hot soup. Is that right?
Hot soup, yes.
Okay.
Apologies for my connection tonight.
It's okay. What did you say after that?
Well, hot soup, it sticks when it hits you, so...
Gotcha.
Soup leaves a nice long...
All right. Christy.
Hi, my name is Christy, and I'm playing Vanessa. And scars that Vanessa, she probably had many scars, but I said one that was probably more poignant to her was probably around the time when it was after her house had fallen and she was a lone survivor. The matron mother of like this decided to, slight the Heretic family, and I was one of the last survivors, so you might want to think of Vanessa as kind of like beyond Greyjoy, I guess, or Sansa, in that sense that from very on, she wasn't allowed to do much. She was a little bit more than a slave. She was kind of like a pet, really, of the matron mother, and works to kind of, do her bidding, and one of the scars that she remembers is from her instructors. She plays several instruments. The one that she really likes to play is a drowned zither made of kind of like spiderweb strings, and it's very black, and you can't tell if it's like really polished wood or stone, but it has like kind of like a iridescence of like a deep blue, and she just plays. And one of the most poignant ones was her instructor made her perform for her mother because her mother was having a birthday, and she wanted her daughter to be there. And as she was playing and practicing, she kept saying faster, 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 faster. So a couple of scars was on her fingertips because she played so fast that they bled.
Okay. All right. Anna.
My name is Anna. I play Escarel. She's a half-elf... What am I? I'm a wizard. Half-elf wizard with subclass Necromancer. Oh, it's been a day. So she has one physical scar, and that's on her knee. When she was running through the fields, there was a plank of wood that they were using for construction for the horse paddocks, and there was a nail sticking out, and she ran and she tripped, as she normally does, and fell, and the nail went through her knee, and now she has a nice rainbow-shaped scar. And now she's probably going to be scarred because she just killed a widow last session, so that's going to probably haunt her.
All right. Mario.
Hi, I'm Mario. I play Luca Dualar, the Grey Cleric, who's easily the nicest and most approachable and sociable member of this group. Definitely. He has a burn scar of a chain around his right upper arm from when he went to prison for sleeping with the Duke's wife, which, if you hear him say, was completely justified and he did nothing wrong.
All right. Gotcha. All right. Well, thank you all for sharing that. We're going to go ahead and get started tonight, so if you'll listen up, I'll kind of set the scene for us. So, now during our last session, your character spent some time in Antremoor shopping for things you needed, and you also spent a little time trying to learn about the village. You found out that the locals are concerned that the Bleeders, a mercenary force hired to protect the village, are too few in number to really guard the village in the case of an emergency. You also learned that the blacksmith's son, Darren, was found dead near Mirror Creek, and that there were gashes on his body. Finally, you heard rumors that some farmers saw a dragon flying over the woodland hills in the north of the village, to the north of the village. After that, you spoke with the captain of the Bleeders, a half-orc woman named Samara, and she hired you to apprehend an elvish outlaw named Aelin. He was awaiting execution, but killed a guard and escaped. Samara told your party that Aelin was last seen near the Scratch Woods, so you gathered some provisions and left the village. You found it hard to track Aelin, but eventually you picked up a trail that turned out to lead to a spiked log trap. Nevertheless, from there, you followed more obvious signs of passage to the bandit's camp, and when the guard wolf noticed you, it attacked and combat ensued. Your victory was hard fought, but you were able to overcome them. First the wolf fled, then the Goliath fell, next was Aelin, and finally the gnomish woman surrendered. And that is where we pick up tonight. It's a spring day and the ground is moist from a recent rain. A canvas roof throws shade over the encampment. There's a pot with a fire underneath it, and a partially dressed deer is hanging from a tree. A gnomish woman, small and round with wavy blonde hair, drops her crossbow and says, "I yield." For a moment, all is quiet, but the sound of forest insects and your quickened breathing. Trunk stands closest to the gnome. What does she say or do, if anything, Elizabeth?
Looks to the rest of the party, says, "Anybody got some rope?" and sort of holds her staff at the gnome.
Okay.
I have rope. I've got 50 feet. I think we should tie her to the Goliath too, so we're strung together and we can't run as easy.
I think the Goliath could just, pick her up and run normal.
Well, unless
Like
you
the backpack.
stabilized him perfectly and healed that wound, he's gonna have a hard time running.
Is anybody injured? Are we okay? Do we need to heal?
You could always rest and go back in the morning.
I can tell you what, I can play a song and during a short rest, you guys get a little boost maybe.
I think I'm
I
fine.
wanted to stop and that'll give me time to summon Kevin. Kevin, he's really good at putting a campsite together. And if you guys just put, your things, you can set up your bed, roll with your bed, and, collect all the stuff. But he can't lift that much, so he can just maybe get all the backpacks and whatnots together and, after a rest, of course.
The longer we wait, the more Aelin rots. The harder he will be to carry.
Oh, he's dead. If dead is dead. It doesn't matter how dead. We just gotta make sure these chuckleheads don't go anywhere. And how are we gonna totem them?
We could
We don't
build
have
a
any beast of
sled.
burden, and I think that guy's big. How are we gonna subdue him?
I think we should tie everybody up.
Can still walk.
And march them
If
in
they
like
can still
ducks?
walk. Yeah, we'll just bring the big baddie guy's head, and it'll be a lot lighter because we won't have the whole body.
Oh, that sounds, all this does not sound great.
Luca would like to head over to Aelin and search him for any sort of holy symbol or any sign of dedication to a deity that they may.
I would
Okay.
like to
I'll
help,
just
but I'm
play
looting
song
while
on
I
the
help.
Oh, hold on.
I'd like to loot too.
Y'all hold on, okay? So I'm gonna deal with one person at a time. All right. So Mario, you just said that you're gonna head over to Aelin, and I believe you were saying that you're going to look for any kind of holy symbol, something to indicate how he might be laid to rest or something like that. Is that what you said?
Yeah, basically. I want to know what deity he worships so I can give him burial, right?
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Now, when you go over to Aelin, again, as I've mentioned, he is an elf. He's kind of dirty, you know, from being out in the woods. A very wiry frame that he has. He was wearing dark clothes, long black hair that's a bit messy. You find bits of like leaves and twigs and stuff kind of like in there. As you're looking at his body, you'll notice that he's missing 2 fingers on his left hand. And as you're searching around for a holy symbol, around his neck, you find this silvered chain. And at the end of the silvered chain is a bloodstone. And as you're there searching him, he's on the ground, and this bloodstone that's around his neck is kind of like, it's hard to tell in the sunlight, but you see from kind of like deep within the stone, it's giving off this slight kind of like pulsing glow. And as you're there with him, you notice that Aelin is not dead.
Strange. Is he unconscious?
He appears to be unconscious right now.
Then I'm going to yank the necklace off of him, and I will say, "He lives."
I run over and smack him with my mace as hard as possible in the head. I'm not taking that extra life.
All right. So,
Kill a guard.
Luca
Guard, he's a bad guy.
But we need the face.
Luca stands over Aelin, and you know, it kind of begins searching him. Finds this necklace with a pendant on it that he's wearing. Snatches it off. Discovers that Aelin is still alive. He snatches it off, and then he just kind of looks back at the party. He lives, you know, and then immediately Kimmin runs over with their mace and takes a strike towards Aelin. Now, set. Rolled a strike with advantage.
Still can't do it. A 3 and a 2.
A 3 and a 2. Okay. So Mario, as you're kneeling down beside Aelin, again, you notice he's alive, not dead. You call out that he's alive, and then immediately Kimmin rushes over, tries to bash his head in with a mace, but instead of striking Aelin, who is unconscious on the ground, they just smash their mace into the ground. And as I mentioned before, the earth is kind of like damp, so it just kind of like kind of this little bit of muddy water splashes up on your face or whatever. And I'm assuming they pull their mace out, and you're observing this very close to you.
What are you doing?
We need the face. We need
Well,
the face.
we don't need him alive. We just need proof that it's him. I mean, I can hit him in the back of it.
We might as well take him back alive. She didn't care if he
his body. Just like
Obviously.
scalp to toes, just strip him of literally every single thing I can find.
Okay.
Did manage to kill a guard.
So, yeah, pause. Everybody pause for just a second. So I heard one question in there, Elizabeth, I think you asked it, did Aelin flinch? Now, I don't believe that Trunk was up there, but I can tell Luca for sure that, during that whole time, Aelin did not flinch. He's definitely out, but he is still breathing, He is on the ground. Now, last time, I believe it was Anna who had cast some kind of poison spray or something like that.
Yeah, Ray of Sickness.
Ray of Sickness is what it was.
He's poisoned.
Yeah. So she cast Ray of Sickness, and when Aelin fell, I believe I told you all that his eyes rolled, back, and he just kind of like fell backwards on the ground. And as you're looking at him now, he's he's already pale, even for an elf, and that didn't help matters. And you look at him, and he appears to be sick. His eyes are open, but they're just kind of like in the back of his head, almost like he's having a seizure or something like that. But so anyway,
Strip him of everything scalp to toes, so he has.
yeah. So Fenestra or Luca, says, "What are you doing?" Fenestra weighs in. We can take him back alive, and then Kimin is swayed by that, begins stripping items or weapons off of him. Now I can tell you.
Underwear, and I'll leave him like a shirt and pants, but I'm taking his armor, his weapons, all of his items, everything on him, and I'm just taking it off and moving it away from him. I'll share. I don't want it on him or near him, so he can grab stuff if he does wake up.
Okay. All right. So he would be wearing studded leather armor, which you take off. He was also carrying a finely made scimitar. And as you're removing it from him, you notice that it's kind of etched with, it is etched with runes on it. It has a black corded hilt. And then you find a pouch with 50 gold pieces on it as well. You take all of those things off, and he's just left with clothes, essentially.
Okay.
Now,
If we build a sledge, we can put the rest on it and make the Goliath drag them.
That's true. I'd also like to strip each of them of their things, because I don't think
I
they
can
should
strip
have them
people
on them
down
either.
too.
Yeah, please, jump in and help strip people down. They don't need stuff. They're
Let's go
bad.
ahead and do this.
One of them was a spellcaster, right? One of the enemies was a spellcaster.
Yes.
I want to check them.
hold,
Oh yeah, I think that one's
Did-
dead, so go ahead and move back for her.
hold on, just jog my memory. Was
Because I could do it all.
I don't recall one of the enemies being a spellcaster.
Oh,
I don't either.
remembering that.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, so no, none of these should be spellcasters. I don't think they did anything like that. But there's a bit of conversation between Kimin and Fenestra, and it appears as though Astriel, kind of got involved with that as well, and Kimin tells them to go check the other two. So,
Yeah, the corpses. We want to check all of them and make sure we're not leaving stuff behind.
yeah, well, there are no corpses right now. There's actually no one that is dead. Let's get there. So the gnome is up. Okay, so Fenestra, let's start with you. Who would you have gone to? There was the gnome who's just kind of like up and surrendered, standing near Trunk. Trunk was going to be tying them up with rope, is what was happening.
I do want to do the gnome and kind of interrogate the gnome, maybe get some extra information if I can.
Okay, let's start with what you take off of her as you're kind of like searching her.
Okay.
She has a small wooden mirror that you find. She's also carrying a scimitar, and she dropped down near her is a handheld crossbow, and she's got a case with 13 bolts.
Crossbow with 13 bolts.
Yeah. Now, by way of interrogating her, what are we talking about here? What do you want to do?
All right. why they're holed up back here, and why are they so important, and are they going to be a problem? And they better not defy us, or we're gonna. I just really want them to just be compliant, but I also want to know why they're out here in the first place.
Okay. So, you're asking these questions. Would you prefer to do this in a way where you're kind of trying to persuade her to talk to you, or are you trying to threaten, intimidate her into talking to you? How do you think you're interrogating her?
She's pretty good at both, but she's better at persuasion.
Okay. All right. Go ahead and give me a roll on that as you're asking her these questions.
It's 6 plus my proficiency. I have a proficiency in persuasion.
Okay.
So 14. 14.
All right. As you're asking her these questions, you look at her and, she's paying attention to the things that you're asking of her. And she looks over towards the Goliath, who is still out, slumped against the tree, I think is where we left him. And then she looks over to Aelin, who's also on the ground and out, not knowing whether her compatriots are alive or dead. And then, she kind of glares at Kimmin as well, who is still standing near Aelin, holding this mace. And then she looks back at you. And again, this tiny bit of a bandit, looks up.
It's okay.
You can tell that she's frightened, scared, a bit.
Thirsty? You want something to use to cover yourself? It's okay.
No, it's okay.
Why are you out here in the first place? But we have to bring you back because you did bad things. It's okay. Sit down if you need to. While Trump is tying you, she's gonna tie you up now. But we're gonna take care of you. Okay?
We're out here because we've been living the life of bandits for a while now, and we were trying to escape from Antremoor with Aelin. They meant to hang him.
What are you escaping?
Well, we're outlaws.
Escaping justice.
There is no justice. I mean, we're...
Well, there's more ways to stay alive and make a living than to rob other people.
I know, and we did it once. Aelin and myself and Hammerface.
Cool. It sounds like you had a time. I'm just, we're going to do our best to make sure everything is together. You're going to make sure that your teammates stay alive. And we'll do our best not to kill you along the way, but we do have to bring you back. You do understand.
If you're taking us back to Antremoor, it doesn't matter. You can kill us here.
Well, actually, we can't because then we won't get paid.
It does matter because you're worth money. We're not doing this for our health. It actually means a lot. I mean, come on now. We just going to drag you back to justice for just charity. You're funny though.
All right.
My name is Helen Brielle. Good name. What's your name?
As you were kind of saying the thing about it does matter because we won't get paid, Kimmin chimed in with that, she hangs her head and I'm Leona.
Well, Leona, what you can do is turn this around. You're going to jail, okay? But hopefully the judge has leniency. It doesn't go, right? We have no control of that. Let's hope they have leniency. The next time, maybe you should do mercenary work or bounty work, bring
All right. So as you're saying that, she looks at you, and she's like, "That is what we were. We were mercenaries, and we were working within the law for Lord Colburn. We were once in his employ."
That changes things. I might have to take some of the things I said back, but not really. We still got to bring you. Sorry, Leona. That's interesting.
What happened?
I don't know how to take that, but okay.
Who said that? Who said what happened?
Trunk, and then I'm looking at
Okay.
Trunk like, yeah, what happened? That was weird.
The
I
three
was
of
saying
us-
that to Leona.
Yes. The three of us were part of a mercenary group known as the Copper Blades, and we worked for Lord Colburn, and we served alongside his army, and we were tasked with defending a bridge, and we did well, but half of our number fell during the defense of the bridge. And instead of appreciating us, Colburn only paid us half, since we were only half in number after that.
That is not right. That is so
That's not-
unfair.
So we took his payment.
Tell me more.
So we took his payment and decided to make Antremoor pay for it.
They didn't pay you half. He did. You should have robbed him directly. I mean, seems to make more sense than robbing the people who had nothing to do with it. So we're still hauling you in for our pay. What you do after that, I recommend, sticking it to the person that stuck it to you.
I don't know what to say with all this information. I really don't. Leona, we're going to do our best. We have at this point, I think I might have to do a team meeting. You're still going to be tied up, but we're going to sit you up against the tree so you can have lower lumbar support. And I gotta have a little chit chat with my teammates, okay? Don't go nowhere. You can't go anywhere because you're tied up. But it's cool. We'll be right over here.
Can I go
Do what you
to
must.
Barbarian?
All right, so that's going on with Leona and Fenestra and Trunk and Kimmin.
I don't.
Anna goes over to check the Barbarian. Now, not Barbarian, the Goliath. The Goliath is
Whatever he is.
large in frame, stands several feet taller than anyone else here. Not quite a giant, but really, really big. And as you go over there, you see that his face is really disfigured. Like it looks like he's taken massive injury to the face. And I don't mean from the battle with you all. I'm talking about, scars long past. And as you are checking him, you will see that, just a general descriptor of him, he's bald. He has, lots of kind of like these dark blue tattoos etched into his pale skin. You find that he's carrying a black velvet mask. It's just kind of tucked into his breeches in the back. And then he's also got a pouch with 15 gold on it. He was also carrying a scimitar as well.
Is it like as exquisite as the other one, or?
No, it's not as nice as the other one.
Question.
Yes.
Black velvet mask, like the Whisperer's holy symbol, black velvet mask?
When you see it, no, it won't be that. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Double checking.
Yeah. It looks like it would fit his face, however, Anna. So it's a little bigger than anyone else here, And those are the things that you would find on him. Around the camp, you will also find a couple of crossbows from Aelin and the Goliath. I don't believe they were using them in battle, so you'll probably find them propped up against a tree or something like that. I am going to pause on you right there, Anna, unless you had something else that you wanted to do as you were searching the Goliath.
No, I just wanted to see what he had.
Okay. David, what is Eldon doing during all of this?
So the fight sort of just ended moments ago. If you recall, he shape-changed from a wolf back to his other form, and surrounding him in about a 10-foot cloud are these active spores, which you've seen attack and go into the kind of nasal cavities of his foes. He's still very, like, you've never seen him this angry before. He's always been very, very calm. And when they surrender, he kind of is looking towards the gnome very quizzically. And when that mace comes thudding down beside Aylin's head, he'll sort of walk over to that group and ask them, "Do we need him dead?"
No, I did, but she says no, so I don't know.
I am confused as to how he lived. I would know what sorcery this is.
I can check that out. I don't have the components for the spell right now, but I can check that out later. Figure out what
So
it is.
we keep him alive for now.
For now.
And then he'll go towards where this interrogation is happening with the gnome and kind of listen in. And when all that is finished, he'll ask her in Gnomish, "Why did you join them?" He's looking very disdainfully at her.
Okay, all right. And she'll respond in Gnomish as well. I joined them to seek fortune. I was always a good fighter, even for someone our size. And they came through, and they put out a call for more mercenaries, and I joined with them, and I served with them lawfully for over a year.
He says in common, "If you served lawfully, then the town will decide your fate. You must be brought back for justice. Will you stand trial?"
If you take me back, I suppose I have no choice but to stand trial. But I believe it is a mockery of justice. Coldburn was unjust to us. He did not pay us what we were owed. We lost half of our number.
It makes sense. And then he'll go back to the rest of the group. Friends,
Yeah, we need to talk, y'all.
I think we have much to discuss here. This group, the Copperblades, might have been wronged by Lord Colburn.
Right, but they wronged the people, and the people didn't do it. It was the Lord, so really they should have gone after him. So they still need to be facing justice for going after the wrong people and vengeance, in my opinion.
I put the velvet mask on my face. It's like, is it soft?
It feels like velvet. It's a little big. It's a little big. Sorry, Christy, I didn't hear what you were saying, or what.
One injustice with another.
I don't know. Maybe we should rest on it. I don't know. I honestly, because we came out here for a job to do, but I don't know how I feel about this. I do want money, though. I want some money.
These
Oh,
three
look,
were
I
the...
got a crossbow. Ka-cha!
We could ask for leniency on those guys,
know she's telling the truth? How can we verify that?
Well, that's a good point. I'd like to make an insight check on the gnome and her story.
Okay. Go ahead.
Let's see. I roll. It's a D20.
D20.
Would you prefer
Plus-
to join her?
Yes, I could use some help, Sally.
Yeah, there are enough people here that someone could, give
I have a
advantage or
plus
whatever.
3 to it.
Okay,
Yeah,
I'll help
join
you
her.
then.
You help me?
All right, so just roll with advantage. Add your plus 3.
So that's a 20 or a 21.
Okay.
That's what it was.
It didn't seem like she was being untruthful.
But I do think she's telling the truth.
So perhaps we could wake Aelin and get his version of the story. He's the leader of these copper blades.
Before we wake anybody up, can we tie them all up completely tightly? I don't want to trust them completely. I mean, they did attack when we showed up.
Yeah, I mean, I'm assuming more than one person has rope probably because of your starter packs and stuff. So you probably have enough rope to tie them up. You feel securely. Who's doing the tying on that?
That's a survival thing, right?
So, Monk, Trump, jeez. Give me a D20 roll. Let me know what you get on your D20 roll. A 5. Okay. All right. So Trunk ties them all, binds them together, spends securely, spends a good bit of time doing that, double checking their work, and looks pretty good. So,
And search the human.
say that one more time.
Someone should search the human.
Oh yeah, I'd like to
Oh, yeah,
search the
okay.
unconscious humans since they're not dead, and I've just been calling them the corpse.
The human or the so there's a
Everything
gnome,
else but the underwear and the clothes.
there's a
It's an
gnome,
elf.
there's an elf, and there is a Goliath.
Oh, so there was the human ranger with a wolf?
With the wolf? I thought there was.
Yeah, I thought the human was the first
Oh,
thing.
I forgot about that one. My apologies.
Oh, good. Okay. I was like, whoa.
There is a human. You're absolutely right. It was the first to fall, and I completely forgot about it. Human male, brown hair, regular build, has a kind of wicked neck scar going, from right side all the way under. As you search him, you find bone dice, like a set of bone dice, and you also find a pouch with 25 gold. That'd be another crossbow as well, another scimitar as well, another set of leather armor as well.
Good job.
All right. And they're actually dead.
Oh, they are dead. Okay.
All right, yeah. Sorry.
So, as a group, we did kill one.
Well, we didn't kill the elves, so we could trade human for elves. I
I think they'd know the difference between a human and an elf if we just brought in a dead human. I mean, there's the ears for starters. Unless we've mangled the head so much you really can't tell, and the fold between the two of them is totally different.
I can't remember exactly how the human went down. I know it was early in combat, but I don't think anyone did anything that would have completely, disfigured the face.
If the fight ended in 3 turns, I could have bonus action stabilized them. But that is retroactive.
Yeah.
I can, as a cantrip, I can use it as much as I want.
Right. I do believe that our fight went on for longer than 3 rounds, and I don't think that was thought of during combat. So, and I rolled their death saves over here just a second ago, and they actually did die. So those are the things that you find on them. Now, What is your party doing? Are you still discussing what you're going to do? Have you made up your minds to return?
We could take a rest. We could think about it. These copper blades were only doing what was right in their minds for survival. You were right, though. They did wrong the people of the village. But they were served something wrong from Lord Colburn.
Who they should have taken it out on directly, if they were doing themselves real justice.
Elan also killed the guards.
Yeah,
More men cannot
he was
defeat
just doing.
a lord.
He was just doing his job.
The Lord is
killed
in
him.
no way enemy.
Do they?
He
Do
left
they
the
kill the
village
people
basically to their own devices. He's off on a campaign somewhere. I mean, how are we to know what she's telling us true?
Well,
Seriously.
If we wait, I can define the truth.
Okay, I guess we rest. I mean, let's rest and make camp. I'll make Kevin make us a camp. He's really good at it. And
I think we should
still
make
think
a-
about it.
I don't think we should make a long rest. I think maybe just a quick short breather and then call them in.
What time is it? What is it like? What?
So I believe you all got started around 2 p.m. And then I believe you spent a few hours trying to find your way there. You had you had used up a lot of time trying to like find their path because you were having problems with that. So you walked around the woods for like a really long time. So you've spent a lot more time out here than was necessary. Not your faults really, but you couldn't
We got
find
a lot
them.
of practice in.
You got some practice in on tracking. So anyway, I would say you're probably pushing 7-8 p.m. something like that at this point.
I mean, like I said, I get Song of Rest, and I give you a 600 hit die to bring me back up to map, probably. That's just like 4 hours.
The woods
We
are
probably get
dangerous
back.
at
We
night.
got a letter. We get a letter too to let us back into town if you want to go tonight.
I think we should go tonight because we don't want to sleep in these woods. I don't think they're
Do you
that
wanna
far
stay in
from
the
where we
woods?
meant to. Well, think about
we
what
want
we
to travel in the woods.
Yeah, traveling in the woods at night is equally dangerous. At least if we
Right,
camp, we're in the defense.
Or stay here.
Right, but if we're moving, we're alert and expecting danger and kind of keeping an eye on it. If we're half of us are asleep or more of us are asleep, then we got the opportunity to get jumped by potentially more of those giant bugs and things
You
like
can still
that.
set up guards.
Actually, in character, it works the other way. While you're traveling, you don't get your passive perception. While camping, at the very least, the people who are awake get the passive perception. So while traveling, it'd be easier to ambush. Via the rules, anyway.
We're
The
not
forest
doing
is
this
a natural
tonight.
place. I have no problem with staying in this forest. If we want to take a rest for a while, that's okay.
I don't know these forests. As far as the forest is concerned, it's full of bugs and lightning bugs that kill you.
If we take a short rest, I have a question for the DM. If we take a short rest, do we hit level 3?
No,
Okay.
not until you take a long rest. So you're currently level 2, and you won't hit level 3 until you take a long rest.
Okay, because at level
Alright.
3, I cannot get lost in the woods.
Alright, alright. Vanessa
Just
is
like
just
one
like,
rest.
she's gonna take time out to get Kevin to start making camp.
Okay, so just to make sure, I mean, I'm not sure consensus was reached, but are you planning to make a long rest? You're gonna rest for the night. Is that what's?
Just
It's a
call it a
long
night.
rest? And
What
if
time
it's a
is
long
it now?
rest?
I didn't catch it.
7.
7. Yeah, so it's really early, and that's why I'm like, why go to sleep so early? But if we
That's
do,
in order to get back into town.
I say we
think
just
it-
call it as a vote. We just vote.
Well, if
Sun goes down like now, right?
no, it would go down at like 8, right?
Yeah, probably
Wait,
not too long from now. Probably more like 8:30.
And since
And it
we're
took
not
us how many
as
hours?
likely to get, I can find our way out while it's still daylight pretty easy and get us back to the town within maybe like an hour or 2. I mean, we'd clear the woods in 1 hour. We'd be walking through that field for the remaining hour, and it's an open track straight to the village. So within the 2 hours before dark, we could be sleeping in our inn beds instead, comfortably, getting a real good rest.
We also have to drag that.
Yeah, we have to.
That as the Goliath.
It's gonna take a lot longer dragging prisoners.
It won't take us long
If we rest
put them on
overnight,
a
we can.
A scarf that you magically have.
Not a sled, a
Let's-
sledge.
We have to build,
Like you build a sledge. We could build a sledge.
but that will take time, which means we would stay the
And
night.
Esther's at disadvantage in the day, so she
And it's
gets
almost-
to 120 feet at night.
Yeah, so if I
And
also
that's why I say just bring it to a vote.
And
Yes,
Luca,
let's vote.
I want to clarify, Luca, you can divine the truth, but you need to rest the night.
If we rest, I can divine the truth.
And I say we rest. Let's learn the truth before we take our next action. Let's make camp here. Let's put it to a vote.
raise your hand if you want
I'll-
to take them to the village now. It's just me
I want to
then.
get out of
Alright.
this swamp too, but I see better at night than in the day. But it's okay. I want to hear the truth. We've saved people's lives already. I told you to kill them from the beginning, but no. So we have to do it this way. We do it this. Let's make camp. I'm gonna bring Kevin. We're gonna have good meals, I think.
So-
It wasn't that I wasn't
Sure,
trying.
Tom.
I just can't kill anything yet.
I'm gonna take a yes.
I have agreed. You would. Just y'all want to sleep here in the scummy, nasty peat moss and dirt and bugs and
Alvin
smells
says
and
to
blood.
Cameron, this is all natural. We'll be fine here. It'll be one night in the woods, and then we can return to civilization.
You've never slept under the stars?
During training we did, but we had, well, I guess I've got this tent here, but we had better accommodations and there wasn't a rotting body nearby. So, it's
Rotting is all part of the natural order. Everyone's rotting. And then Eldon goes.
still growing.
What?
Eldon goes over to the campfire that's sort of coming. I guess I don't know if it's dwindling down. He's going to stoke it up, and you see on his pack, most of his gear he's going to unassemble into this kind of mini still with lots of little vials, and he's getting to work with some equipment. He's going to start heating beakers over the fire.
Okay.
And he casts produce water and pours water into various vials and beakers.
All right, so Eldon, takes his packs off and begins setting things up like that and begins doing what he's doing. And as I understand, you all have finally decided after a bit of conversation, you've taken a vote and you're going to sleep in the woods for the night at this encampment, kind of makeshift bandit encampment. And for the purposes of resting, being able to summon a bit more of the divine on Luca's part in the morning to hopefully determine whether or not the bandits are being truthful about being treated unjustly by Lord Coldburn before you make a final decision of what to do. That being said, there are some amongst your party, seemingly Kimmin, who is very, adamant about the bandits having wronged, commoners or whatever. And then there are people who made points like Luca, how are, four going to take on, a lord in his castle, which you've been in Antremoor, you've seen the castle. It's a big stone, moss-covered castle. No way four people are getting in there to attack a lord. But you've each made your points. you're going to begin setting up your own personal camps for the evening. Before we go forward, notice that Poison Fang 13 has joined us in chat, and we appreciate it. Thank you for coming and hanging out with us tonight. Now, Eldon's doing that. Is there anything that Trunk is doing in particular, Elizabeth?
Building a sledge.
Okay. All right. The idea is you're going to kind of like pull the Goliath and Aelin possibly back tomorrow, or make the Goliath pull everyone else.
Goliath is going to pull them back.
Okay. All right. Gotcha. Is there anything in particular that Kimmon's going to be doing as you all are setting up camp?
Well, since they're all awake, I'd like to do my 4-hour trance while everybody else is at least somewhat good and able to watch the prisoners.
Okay.
So that while they are sleeping, I can be awake the rest of the night and keep a watch.
Okay. All right. Kimmon does that. Christy, is there anything Fenestra is going to be doing as everyone is setting up camp?
She's gonna take time out while Eldon and Kimmon were talking to summon Kevin. I said, okay, Kevin, let's make camp for the evening. And he's gonna go about cleaning up all the stuff. He's gonna arrange Eldon's posse that he was putting water together. He's gonna make sure that there's kindling by it. Like start stacking firewood and smoothing out bedrolls and sweeping up stuff, making it look presentable.
Okay, so Fenestra's going to ritually cast and get her invisible, unseen servant, Kevin, to begin helping out with those chores. And is there anything Astrel will be doing?
Gonna, I guess, pull up my spell book and kind of start planning things. I do have a question for the DM.
Okay.
For identify, it says I need 1,000 gold piece pearl. Or
Should be 100 gold.
I can read.
Yeah.
100 gold piece pearl, so I should be buying that to cast it.
Yeah, you need to spend the 100 gold pieces for that, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just checking. Yeah, so I'll just take up my spell book and start checking notes and writing things down.
Okay.
Dungeon Master, I have a question.
Sure.
You can, over the course of a rest, basically identify an item for free. Do you use that rule, or do you not? Because I've played with people who do.
Yeah, I think that I've allowed some other players to kind of do that over the course of a long rest or something like that, try to figure out what an item is. So, yeah, if there's one of these things or a couple of these things that you're trying to figure out what it is, you can spend some time with it, around the camp, kind of playing around with it.
I'd like to try to figure out if that bloodstone is magical and if it does anything.
Okay, all right. So you'll be working with that. Now, I believe Kimmon was taking a rest. They'll be in kind of like a trance for 4 hours. And I'm assuming that Kimmon, would have told everyone what was going on, that they wanted to take a rest so that they could be up while everyone else is sleeping. After about an hour of being at the encampment, Aelin will come back to consciousness. The one that they've referred to as Hammerface, the Goliath, will come back to consciousness as well after a bit of time. There.
Here we go. What are we gonna do?
All right. Now,
Oh, good. Now you can walk so we can attach you together.
they're all bound together. And they don't seem to be talking, not even to one another. Aelin is looking around. Let's see. Eldon and Fenestra. You all will, kind of definitely register that there's a bit of frustration on the Goliath's face, and you even kind of like see him, not bashing his head in against the tree, but just kind of like butting his head, back against the tree.
Hold on. Hold up, big guy. You thirsty? You got a headache? You probably have one now. Calm down. Elvin, you got Mountain Dew calming down with that Mountain Dew help?
I have some right here. If he wants to
Yeah.
drink. He may like some.
Let's try it.
Okay.
Hey, big guy, you want something to drink? It's really good.
All right. The Goliath just kind of glares and doesn't really give a verbal response.
How about tickling? Would that help? Okay, I will.
All right.
Well, I don't know. Do you speak? Speak?
He speaks, Aelin says.
Alright.
Perhaps not to you.
Oh, excuse me. Rude. I won't say anything. Your name Hammerface or Hammerhead. Hammer something. I don't judge. It's cool. You thirsty?
I'm sure he is, as we all are, and hungry. We were beginning to prepare our own dinner.
I have a berry. You can all eat one.
They're really good. Try it. You like.
Does he look like a berry is going to fill him up?
High five, Sarah. Come on.
They're very good berries.
They are very good.
And Eldon will hold out his drinking horn and use shape water to pull the liquid into the horn from a distance, and then come and give it to the Goliath.
Okay.
Please.
Oh, he's
You
gonna
must
have to
be-
feed it to him because his hands are tied.
We try to
And-
be hospitable.
And then he digs into one of his pouches and finds a small little dried up berry. It's delicious.
All right. He looks.
Mage handed it into his mouth, like force it in there. Here, boom.
Okay.
Right.
All right. So Fenestra casts Mage Hand, takes it from Eldon, and just kind of like pushes it towards his mouth. And, he doesn't resist very much as he sees the berry floating towards him. His eyes go a little wide at the sight of this kind of like levitating berry. And then he takes it and just chews it up and nods at Eldon.
He regains 1 hit point,
Okay.
Yeah,
and it nourishes him for a full day.
All right.
you're good now. Taken care
Yes.
of.
Does some color return to his cheeks?
Yeah, I mean, as you look at him and the berry takes effect, he's down a considerable amount of hit points and injured, no longer actively bleeding or anything like that, but looks pretty beat up. But as he's eating the berry, he kind of like, grunts a little bit, as he's chewing it up.
Everyone knows
And
what Sarah's talking about, okay? You can deal. How about you? I see you awake, Aelin. I'm sorry. Aelin is what you call. You good too? You need water? Sarah, give him water.
Would you like a drink, sir? And
Oh.
he pours another drink over,
all right.
and brings the horn over to him for drinking.
I'd like to keep a close eye on.
I would take a drink and one of those berries if you have it.
Okay, he digs around in his pouch again.
All
They
right.
are quite delicious.
All right. And do you just like feed it to him because he's bound,
Yeah, I'll give it to him. I'll just pop it in his mouth.
All right, he'll bite into it. It is quite good. And water, please, if you don't mind.
Here you go. Try it. It's good.
All right.
See, you feel better already. Eat the copper blades, right? Right, Sarah? Copper blades. That course.
All right. Aelin kind of looks towards Leona and then looks back at you. We were known as that once, yes.
Well, the town has set a bounty on your heads.
Yeah, but we're supposed to bring
If you take us back, they'll execute me for sure, and them as well.
So why don't you tell us about Lord Colburn? How did he wrong you?
Well, it sounds as though you've already spoken with Leona. And again, he'll look at her. And perhaps she's told you too much.
Or not enough.
Is there anything...
look
Maybe
like
we
he's
can
mad.
help you or not, because I'm not all the way convinced. Maybe you should do it. Help us. Help us help you.
Does he look like he's mad at her or faking?
You can give an insight check.
15.
Doesn't look like he's mad at all. It looks like he's a bit annoyed, that she's seemingly been speaking, as
But
he's
genuinely so.
genuinely annoyed, yes. Yeah. So,
Master does that.
and as you are all, saying things like "help us, help you," he will, look at whoever was saying that. I don't recall, but he'll look at them and. If you've made up your minds to take us back, I gain nothing from talking with you. Because I'm a dead man, either way.
Cameron, maybe you should have hit him in his head. He doesn't get it. That he's
Oh my
alive right now.
gosh, I'm sleeping, elf style sleeping. I can't do anything until my 4 hours is up.
Leave
What
them.
is that?
In the morning, we will know the truth.
Alright. Very well.
Alright, as we're at this natural pause, I just noticed we have a couple of other people who have joined us in chat. So I just wanted to say thanks to that, including one of my local homebrew players, Tino. Tino, thanks for joining us tonight, as well as ITM7NS.
That's me, actually.
Oh, that's you. Okay, I hadn't noticed you before.
You're welcome.
Mario, thanks for joining us. I do appreciate you being here tonight. Anyway, thank you, Tino, for joining us. So, you all, I take it, decide to just kind of like let them sit and sulk or whatever it is they're going to do as they're here. And then do you engage conversation amongst yourselves, or are you ready to bed down for the evening? Because at this point, as you've set up camp and done this talking and prepared, whatever Eldon was preparing, and been kind of like taking a look at these items or what have you, you've spent probably a couple of hours doing that, and I'm assuming that you've all kind of like gotten into your own rations or what have you, and or eaten a good berry or whatever it was you were going to do to sustain yourself for the evening, and you've spent a couple hours doing that, and darkness definitely falls. So, is there anything else you wanted to accomplish at campsite tonight, or are you all ready to bed down?
If
Well,
it's been 4 hours, I'd like to wake up.
Yeah, it's only been a couple hours at this point, so...
Well, Kevin's gone after a while, so, hopefully he made it nice and cozy, arranged some stuff for other people, and he set up Vanessa's tent, probably away from the fire, because it probably bothers him a little.
Okay.
After I finish identifying the item, if it is magical, I am going. Luca is going to go and just perform some funeral rites for the dead bandit. He's going to bury him because they need to bring the body back. But yeah, he'll say some prayers to the Whisperer to watch over the dead person's spirit.
Okay. All right. So
I'd
he...
like to talk to Trump.
All right.
Trump,
Yeah.
would you, I know this is random, would you teach me how to speak Goblin?
Yes. What languages do you speak that I don't?
I speak Elfish and Abyssal and Undercommon.
Ooh, those all sound exciting. How about you trade me Abyssal?
Okay. Yes, I can do that. I think. I've never taught someone. I can do this.
The Adventures of Astral Dueling, yeah?
All
I
right.
would like to make sure that all of their gear is like in amongst where we're sleeping, so it's really hard to get to it without like disturbing a sleeping person.
Sure,
Like,
sure.
awake person.
So you collect all of their things and kind of like stack it amongst your stuff in a way that it's very conspicuous to get to. So,
And if possible, start checking out that Alien Special Scimitar.
okay. All right then. So you'll kind of like spend some time looking at that, examining it. Again, it's looks like a very fine blade. There are runes etched into it that you can't really read at all. And then it's just got this black corded hilt to it. So it looks like the sword has been, definitely cared for. And again, very fine blade. So Astrael, Trunk will, discuss teaching one another languages. Kevin set up the site for everyone, moving things around, trying to make things cozy. Eldon was kind of like working on the things that he was concocting. Lucas spent a little time with the blade, or with the necklace, and then you all just kind of like sit around for a bit longer. And again, night falls. Who's going to take first watch while Kemen's trying to finish their... Okay, so...
Well, I would like to be closer to the evening. So
Oh, it is evening.
during
Yeah.
the daytime.
Okay. All right. So, Finestra and Luca and Trunk, it looks like, are going to kind of like take the first watch together.
I'll wait and leave too.
Okay. All right.
I'll do this.
So, Luca and Finestra. You take your watch, and nothing passes. You hear the sound of insects in the woods, just kind of like with their buzzing, their noises. Other than that, you're not attacked. You don't notice the three bandits doing anything. The corpse doesn't get up and walk off. Nothing strange happens at all whatsoever. You'll pass a few hours. Eventually, Kemen will emerge from their meditation.
So, Finestra's awake and Luca's awake and everybody else is asleep or tied to a tree, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I'd like to go ahead and double check the bonds on the prisoners just in case, because while I was sleeping or trancing, I figured that's time for them to try and wiggle out when we can't see them.
Yeah.
Make sure everything's still super tight, nothing's been slightly wiggled out of or whatever, and if it has, rebind it.
Yeah, as you go over there, it doesn't look like they've tried to escape. They've been under watch, and the Goliath is, in fact, snoring. The gnome appears to be asleep. Aelin is just... I'm assuming you have a campfire? Or is that a bad assumption on my part?
No, we have a campfire thanks to Kevin.
Okay. Aelin is probably just staring towards the campfire. And that's what you observe as you go look at them.
Okay, so I'll feed the fire a little more just to keep it warm and functional, and then I'll set up to where I can keep an eye on all three prisoners and just watch them carefully. And that's how I will spend the majority of the watch. It's just making sure they're not getting away or doing anything, just focused on them.
Okay. All right, you do that. Now, I want to make a correction on my part real quick. I believe that I told you that the Goliath had a scimitar and a crossbow, but he did not, so you should take one crossbow off because he didn't have a crossbow.
Oh no, you didn't say crossbow. I didn't write it down.
Okay, all right. He didn't have a crossbow.
I wrote down both, so just scimitar.
He didn't even have a scimitar. He had a great axe.
Oh, he had a great axe.
He had a great
You said
axe.
Scimitar, mask, and 50 gold pieces for the Goliath.
Right, the scimitar was wrong. He had a great
So
axe.
great axe.
Yes.
Okay, I got that down.
I'm really good.
Did
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was gonna say.
Yeah, the human would have had those things. The Goliath did not. Yeah.
And just confirm what the. Can you confirm the gnome just in case? So I got it right.
Oh yeah, the gnome was right. It was a small wooden mirror, 12 gold pieces, and then the scimitar, the crossbow.
Okay.
I'll divide all
I
the
got
gold
that.
Yeah.
tomorrow. I'm
Yeah.
still wearing the black velvet mask. I'm using it like as a stage mask.
Okay. All right. Now, I'm sure Luca is probably going to want to go to bed after his watch. Is that correct? All right. And then Fenestra is staying up all night. Is that what's going on, or are you going to try to get? Because you told me you were going to rest during the.
I'd rather stay up as much as she can at night and probably sleep closer to daytime.
No.
But
So is she going to do that over the watch tonight, or is she planning on resting sometime tomorrow?
she plans on resting sometime tomorrow.
Okay, so the implication of that, just so you know, Christy, as a player, if she doesn't rest tonight, she won't be level 3 when everybody else is.
Oh, well then, never mind. I will take a nap now.
I'll take a watch. I'll wake up and take a watch.
Okay. All right, so Astrael is awoken for watch. Is Trunk going to take watch as well right now?
She's making sure that there's 2. So if Estrella and Kemen are up,
Okay,
they can do that. She'll take the last
gotcha.
with Kemen.
the mask
Kemen's
off.
staying the rest of it, right?
Okay.
I'll be up for the rest of the time because
As Astrael and Kemen are up and taking watch, kind of the same thing. The bandits don't attempt to escape, and nothing significant happens at all whatsoever. You just take your watch, and it passes without incident. I'm assuming that Astrael will go back to sleep, get a little more rest, and then Trunk's going to be awoken. And then during that, same thing. Absolutely nothing happens at all whatsoever. By the time you finish that watch, dawn breaks. It is a new day. Everyone will have had enough rest to recover all your full hit points, spell slots, etc. And you will be at level 3.
Yeah.
Now, day has broke.
So the first thing that I do is I get up and I move over to the body. How is it looking? Has it become gross over the first minute?
No, I mean, it's not gross.
Alright. Then Luke is going to begin ritual casting Gentle Repose, which should stop it from decaying and turning into undead for 10 days. He's going to sit down and begin chanting a ritual. Kandar extravagandos, drus indoctunus frondus Kandar, Vimatus Kandar.
Okay. All right. So Luca begins casting this divine prayer spell over the body of the human. Now, while it wasn't looking really gross or anything like that. I don't know when rigor mortis sets in, but I'm going to assume it was probably in rigor. So the body was probably really, really stiff when Luca began casting that, and then as he cast the gentle repose on it, it goes to a more kind of like supple, natural looking state, as...
does it unpoop itself?
No, it doesn't do that.
They do that.
But
Just been curious
it,
about that with
it looks less rigid and less dead, It's dead, but looks less so. All right. Now, Luca does that. Is there anything that... Oh, and Luca spent, enough time with the pendant. It is a periapt of wound closure.
That's why he lived. Nice.
Yeah. And Trunk had spent some time with the scimitar. The scimitar is a +1 scimitar.
Great.
Okay. All right. Is Anna doing anything or is Astrael doing anything in particular as they wake up?
Nope, I'm just taking one last look at my spells and then closing my spell book.
Okay. Fenestra doing anything in particular as she wakes up or comes out of her trance?
she wants to know what she was looking at the small mirror and the scimitar and the crossbows throughout the time, and she wanted to know if there's anything.
Okay, so she spent some time looking at the mirror. It wasn't magical, but it is a very fine mirror. Like you could imagine it fetching some money, if she were to sell it.
I do have a question. When you say spend some time, is that the same as identify? Or is that...
No, I think, as Mario was pointing out, I think in 5th edition they've kind of like lessened the importance of identify, and essentially if you have a magic item for long enough, you can kind of figure out what it does. I don't really know the exact amount of time on that, but I am aware that it is kind of a thing.
Short rest, actually.
Yeah, and it may be. I don't remember the exact amount of time.
So I'm not sure then if I should have learned identify, because I don't know if it'd be useless then.
Yeah. So why don't we do this? Just pause on that for right now. I will let this function as it has at this moment, because I think we've used that in some of my other groups, but we haven't used it a lot. So I'll go check on the rules of that, kind of outside of play. We'll let it work as is right now. Let your identify stand, and then if it turns out that identify is going to be useless for you, then you can replace it with something else. Okay? All right. So,
Like a tournament, I guess.
yeah.
Like a time sitting. Because if you're, building, you can kind of get, like, Nestor will probably know how to fix some stuff and take it to the pawn shop and get it done. So, it only makes sense that she would know a little bit about something.
Right. Yeah. All right. Now, so if Anestra did that, is there anything that Trunk's doing? Like I said,
Was the scimitar or the crossbow special, or are they just functional?
they were all like functional, standard, weapons. Yeah. It looks like the only one who was carrying any kind of like magical stuff was Aelin.
So I got a crossbow and a scimitar. Yeah.
You'll pick that up. You can either attempt to sell them or hold on to them, whatever you care to do with that. Trunk was looking at the scimitar, and I've already told you about that. Is there anything else Trunk would do upon waking, or they were taking last watch, so not upon waking, but just first thing in the morning?
If Eldon's up and about, she wouldn't mind going over and seeing what he's up to.
Okay. So, David, what's Eldon up to?
He's probably taking down the still. He's also kind of talking to himself, you think?
Can I just sit and listen for half a second?
Yeah. He's talking strangely to himself, you think. And you see him sort of pull out his pouches. He casts Goodberry, in which these 10 sort of dried cranberries appear in his hands, and he sticks them away. I'll keep you for later. Don't worry about that. And he eats one in the morning. And he's pulling out different pouches, and he says, "How's it going in there?" And you see him pull out a small, what looks like small, maybe small to most people, but large in his hand. This sort of pill bug. Like a potato bug or
A woodlice?
woodlouse, yeah. And he starts talking to it, and he's sort of patting it. He's going, "Oh, keep it up," and he puts it back into a small pouch. And he's just kind of going about his business.
All right.
She's
So.
just gonna wander over to.
Oh no! Go ahead, Elizabeth.
She's gonna sort of wander over and sort of stand and admire the still for a moment.
Okay.
Okay.
It's kind of complicated. Would you like some?
That's quite
He turns to you.
somewhat. Somewhat.
Somewhat, yes. Would you like? You can have some if you like.
What is it?
It's called Mountain Dew.
Ah, that's a fun trick.
The trolls taught me how to make it.
Trolls.
The trolls in the mountains.
time with trolls?
I spent many years with the trolls. They taught me the old ways.
That
Now,
sounds
they
mighty
also taught me how to brew. If you'd like some,
Well, I had some the other day. It was quite nice. I wouldn't say no to a nip again.
you have a container.
Takes a nip. Sort of does a little shiver. You seemed a bit shook yesterday.
I'm worried about the fate of these people. I'm not sure if they've done anything wrong. And I'm worried about the fate of the world. We all have a part to play, you know.
Generally.
He'll take a drink himself as he's taking the disassembling it. And
Just making sure you're
he pours the remainder. He actually waves his hand, and the water pours into his horn, and he caps it and puts it away. Save some for later, you know.
fascinating.
All right.
Can
So
you turn into anything?
Can I turn into anything? Woodland creatures that I've seen. I commune with nature, you see. And
So you could be a bird?
If I've seen such a bird, birds are hard. Maybe in time. For now, creatures of the forest.
Can you teach that?
It requires great training, but I can try. Are you willing to believe in the old ways?
Don't know quite what you mean by the old ways.
That is how I learned how to do these things.
For now, I am me. But thank you.
Okay. And then he continues disassembling the still, packing up camp.
okay. All right. So Trunk and Eldon speak for a little bit as these other things are going on around the camp. Kimmin, it's first thing in the morning. People are getting up and doing all of the activities that you've kind of overheard these last few minutes. Is there anything that Kimmin is doing in particular first thing in the morning?
Well, I'm double checking the ropes again. Even though they were sleeping, I want to make sure they're still nice and tight.
Yep.
Because I really don't trust these guys. If they're anything like we are now, and they were once like us, they'd probably have the chance to try to escape several times.
Yeah, well, you were keeping a pretty close eye on them, and you didn't notice them trying to escape as you go over there. You don't see that the...
I'm going to keep watching them, but while I'm keeping an eye on them, I'm going to see if I can catch Eldon's attention, so if I can get a good berry from him or something. So breakfast happens, and maybe even feed the prisoners a good berry each. Since we're being nice, I should at least try to keep them well fed.
Eldon will gladly offer you anyone who wants one a berry.
Yeah.
You find that they're tart, but quite delicious.
These would make great muffins.
Okay. Now, just a question.
No one's craisins.
So if he's feeding the feeding everyone here and the prisoners as well, just subtract his many good berries from the amount that you cast.
Okay, so he has 10 with him. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Does Finestra want one?
I'll eat these things.
5. Luca?
She's gonna mage hand it from the start.
I'm fine.
Okay. And then he has enough for 3 of the prisoners as well, so you can feed all the prisoners.
That's right. Helen, real good names, Sarah.
All right. So just make note of that. As we've already discussed, you're all 3rd level now, so you should switch to using your 3rd level sheets. Now's about the time that I like to take about a 5 or so minute break. So we'll do that. Before we go to break, I just want to point out you all were talking about pill bugs and wood lice and things like that. And I just wanted to say that in the southern parts of the United States, we call those roly-polies. So
It's true.
it's true. So
I always call them potato bugs.
potato bugs. Okay.
And
Yeah.
I found out that they're called wood lice because there's another type of bug called a potato bug in other parts, and they're like this weird wasp with a really round head, and they also get called roly-polies.
Oh.
But they're cute-ish, but freaky and kind of alien. So I'm like, the wood lice kind, I hope. Those are cute.
Yeah.
So Eldon seems to keep this one as a pet, and he calls it Slater.
All right.
Maybe only Trunks overheard him talking to him. Good job, Slater. And he sort of pats him and puts him back in his pocket.
Yeah.
And the pocket is kind of full of mulch. Seems to be eating it.
All right. Cool. Well, let's go ahead and take that 5-minute break. We'll come back and we'll pick up, and you will make your decision as to what you're doing from this campsite. Okay? So everybody take 5. So we are back now. Before we left for the break, everyone had kind of like finished off their watches and woken for the morning, and you had a couple of things that you had kind of like done around the campsite. You all obviously ate stuff. There was a little bit of conversation between Trunk and Eldon, and we said when we came back we would resume with a bit of role play amongst your group, kind of trying to decide what you're going to do. Seemingly some of you are a little bit conflicted over the story that you've heard from these bandits that you were hired to apprehend and return to Antremoor to see justice. So, what's going on with your party?
Luca is going to gather everyone together, and he will say,
The truth will be known now.
Alright, let's go. Let's do it.
Luca's going to place a string of candles basically around the area, making sure to encompass himself and all of the bandits, and then he is going to hold his hand over one of the candles, and he's going to incant
Seal, Didishi, Pecto.
and then he's going to snap his finger, and when he snaps his finger, the candle ignites, and then all the other candles in the line ignite around them, and he says,
The whisperer will tell me if you attempt deception. Do not resist and do not lie, for I will know.
and I'm going to cast Zone of Truth, and they all have to make a saving throw, but I should note that if they make their saving throw, I can tell, and they can choose to fail their saving throw on purpose. So basically I'm trying to get them to throw the saving throw if they understand, I guess.
Okay. All right then. What's your DC?
My DC is 13.
And it's a wisdom save, correct?
It's either wisdom or charisma. Let me check it real quick.
Okay. Let me know.
It's wisdom, I think.
It's charisma.
Charisma? Okay.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
But I do know if they can choose to fail if they like.
Okay, so regarding, just to make sure, because I don't remember the text of the spell exactly, you said when someone fails it or passes it, or what were you saying about knowing?
So if they succeed on the saving throw, I know that they've succeeded, so I can tell that they're able to lie. Additionally, if they choose to, they can choose to fail the saving throw as a show of good faith. And it's the only spell that works that way.
Okay, all right. So as you cast this spell, the whole time you're doing it, and the whole time you've been in this encampment, the Goliath hasn't said one word to anyone, and as you cast the spell, he just continues to glare as he's done to many of you. and you can tell, like as these candles are, ignited, around him, and as you're speaking the words of your spell and telling them that the Whisperer will let you know whether or not they're telling the truth, the Goliath just glares at you, and you can see him kind of like tense up and kind of like his jaws clench, and you're aware that he's fighting whatever this magic is that you're trying to cast upon him. Okay. All right. So, the other two. I mean, if they fail, do you know automatically that they fail?
Well, yeah. I mean. Yeah.
So you know, no one succumbed to the magic intentionally, but you're aware that they failed. They're under the sway of your magic, is what I should say. So. You've cast Zone of Truth.
The Goliath has resisted. The other two must answer truthfully. Ask her questions of them, and we will know what is going on.
All right. Well, we all have one thing that we want to know.
How many questions do we get?
As many as we like.
Isn't it like
I think it's a duration thing.
10 minutes or something like that?
Okay. There's one thing I really want to know. I want to know about the cold burn. Cold burn, right? You guys claim to be a part of the brigade, and I just want to know, did he indeed steal money from you?
We don't claim anything that is, and this is Aelin speaking, we don't claim anything that is untrue. We were part of a mercenary force. And we were hired by Lord Coolburn. And we were within his employ. And we helped defend his realm. And we did so faithfully. And for that, he chose to treat us unjustly. Now, Luca, you feel as though he feels he's telling the truth.
He speaks truth.
Okay, so my question... Oh, go ahead.
Did you feel justified taken from those who had not wronged you?
I feel that these lands belong to Colburn, and I feel that Colburn owes us. So yes, anything that I take from anyone within his lands, I'm taking directly from him.
So Colburn's peoples are his possessions?
Now, to interject something real quick, because this may not be... we are talking about a sort of medieval time period now, and I'm not saying it's quite as bad as everyone is like serfs and stuff like that, but it's not too far off from it, okay?
No, I get that. Trunk's sort of a little removed from that.
Right.
Like if there were weird little farmers in the hills who didn't really quite do vassalage, that's where she came from, which is why she's a little ticked off about this, even if it's the norm for here.
Okay, gotcha.
Exactly, and like Kemen's from a whole other city country where this is not how it is. So like, I mean, you got their ruling class, but it's not quite the same. Like the commoners are all pretty well cared for, but you're not property.
Yeah. So some of you may come from like more like anarcho-communal societies or something like that. But even if it's, a little unfamiliar to you, you're probably at the very least familiar with the idea of like vassalage and, the way that sort of society works, so it's even if your characters have never experienced it or been a place where that was a thing, you're probably aware that some parts of the world work that way. All right.
Oh, and she knows it works that way. She wants to know if that's how they're justified.
Yeah.
Because that's very much going to color how she feels about them.
In response to what Trunk said, Luca is going to turn and say,
Lords often look at our, as the commoners as no more than chattel. It's how it is. It's how it's always
So
been.
he's a lord then.
Isn't he? I thought he was like a...
Lord
No,
Cold...
Aelin. She's referring to Aelin. She's referring to Aelin.
So Luca is talking about. Hold on just a
No, I
second.
know.
Luca.
Trunk is intending to challenge Luca's assertion that it's okay to do that because he's not Lord.
Well, Luke is not saying it's okay. That's just he's just explaining the justification.
And Trunk is attempting to challenge it.
Yeah.
What he did is unjust, but what Coldburn did was unjust too. We meet injustice with injustice with injustice. We are no better than they.
Yeah, two wrongs don't make a right.
That's why they should
I
get
just
that.
want to get paid, folks. I just want to know who's going to pay us.
Here's
You know?
what I'd like
Just
to ask.
tell me.
Yeah, I'd like to ask our prisoners another question before I totally forget it and tackle. So basically, just because the people are technically his, what if scenario you were somewhere where that's not the thing, but you still have thought that was the right action just because where you come from, you believe that's the right thing to do?
I don't know how to answer your what ifs because that is not the reality that we find ourselves in. I've only responded to Colburn and what he did.
Take him in. I've heard enough. I think we should take him in.
Now, you have mentioned payment. How much are they paying you?
Not enough,
Well,
but more than zero.
100 gold
I
for
mean-
the two, and more for you.
But how much?
I don't know. I say we take them back for justice, even still. Okay, say for instance they are telling the truth according to what Shiny Master Luca says is true, right? They still gotta serve justice, right? And they can still plead their case about mistreatment. We still got a job to do, folks. Did we forget we have a job?
Nope, that's why I'm saying we should take them right in. They've proven themselves to be willing bandits in the case of their own injustice without considering the injustice to others. So that sounds to me like as long as they get theirs, they don't care. And that tells me they need to be taken in to see that there are consequences.
Reason is easy when your belly is full and your boots are well made and the air
Neither
around
of
you
those
is
is
warm.
true.
I'm rolling my
If
eyes
a far-
in the corner like.
Actually, I have
If a
really
farmer-
crappy boots and I haven't eaten more than a good berry, so I'm pretty sure that's not my reasoning right now, because if I'm reasoning the way they're reasoning, leveled out, I'm not well cared for, so I'm still standing with justice.
I say we go where the money goes, because you know what? We take the course of action and go against this lord, we end up dead and
If a farmer is wronged by his lord, does he steal from his neighbor, or does he join with his neighbor?
who's paying me, the farmer or the neighbor? I'm not confused in your middle.
Bring them back. But you might as well kill, I don't care, what's the leader's name?
Aelin.
Aelin.
Aelin. You might as well kill Aelin now. That is what
I
they
tried!
Unless,
I'm bad at it.
unless, of course, you're willing to work for the Cutters. They are in need of men, and you could work back your debt to them.
Oh, I got
What you were
idea.
taking from your fellows.
I got great idea.
You are
I
a
got great
mercenary,
idea.
are you
There
not?
was
Hold on just a second, Christy. So Luca was saying, and I think you said work for the Cutters, but it's the Bleeders, if that's what
Oh,
you were talking
sorry.
about. Okay.
Sorry.
I was confused for a second, but then I caught on, so...
But wasn't it a bleeder guard that Aelin killed?
Yes.
But the Bleeders are mercenaries. They probably don't give a shit that much. Well, what Luke is saying is we can bring them back and be like, hey, maybe instead of killing them, you put them to work, take out of their pay restitution for the guard they killed and for the people they banditry, and then after you have no guards since you're barely holding on as it is, and these guys don't have to die because they got fucked over by Lord Cobra. That is Luca's idea. Regardless, we should take them back anyway because either they go for the plan and they get to live, or they don't go for the plan and they die and we get paid anyway. So that's Luca's suggestion.
I'll go
And
with
then,
that.
Okay.
and then Vanessa's going to say, listen, we got perfect opportunity for them to prove themselves. I heard about this child getting murdered and slit and stuff. Maybe they can go after the killers of that to prove themselves.
Yeah, but then we have to babysit them.
Well, we're babysitting them now.
Yeah, but we
I was
have
pla-
to give them back their weapons to help us do this.
Absolutely.
No, what? Okay, no, we don't give them weapons. We
Or
give them
armor.
Let the
opportunity to
leader of
live.
the leaders decide.
Yeah, I say let
Samara
the
doesn't
leaders
seem
say
too
it.
happy about her dead guard.
If
can
she
advocate
is a
for them.
mercenary, she will care more about coin and efficiency than she will about the life of one of her men. And
What
if
if
not,
Lucas
they're
is
dead anyway.
One of theirs is dead. A life for a life.
That's true. That's true. They did lose one of their own too.
Okay.
I've got the sword and the crossbow and the
That's-
stripes to prove it.
Yes, a life for a life.
So,
We're in the court then, right?
yep, that's all of it. Unless Ashley,
Well,
she's nodding.
Yeah, no,
I think
that's a good idea.
I think Hammer Time has some more work to do.
Susan, Sarah, let's mount up and get this throw on the road and get these people back so we can get some pay, get some drinks, and get some massages. Kevin does excellent foot massages, okay? You just put your feet up, he gets right in there. It's awesome.
I do have a question.
You know, I've never thought about the uses of that spell until you said that just now. And honestly, it's kind of...
You're the
All right. Anna, you have a question. Go ahead.
Would I have known anything about Lord Colburn? I don't know if my family and his were tight. I'm outside the Antremoor, outside this region, so I'm not sure.
I mean, you probably know the name, and in terms of like relations or whatever between like the nobility in this particular country, these aren't like communities that are warring or really hostile with one another. It is part of like a nation, you know. So you probably know of Coldburn, but not anything in particular. You know, you're familiar that he's the lord of this region, and that's about it. Yeah. So, all right.
Just making sure.
So, I believe that I've heard from just about everyone except for Eldon in terms of what's going on. So, David, where's Eldon at with this? Because he hasn't weighed in at all.
He doesn't know too much about the laws of these lands, but from what Luca has said, it looks like they have a chance to repay their debt, and we will bring them in for justice. So Eldon says we have a chance to allow themselves to earn their freedom at the discretion of the law. And they have lost one of theirs, and they have taken one of the towns. The balance is equal. Let us bring them in.
You
Okay.
make plenty sense, Sarah. That's why I like you.
All right. So you all have this bit of a conversation. You ultimately, it sounds like, decide on returning the bandits to Samara as you were hired to do. And it seems as though you're going to try to convince them to take them on as mercenaries and let them work off their debt to society or what have you. Am I understanding that correctly? That's your plan?
Yes.
Okay. All right. That being said, I see no reason to kind of like prolong, you know, a bit of travel or whatever. So you break camp, get your things together, having your party having decided their course of action. The three bandits, Hammerface, Leona, and Aelin, don't really say anything, you know, at all. They don't make an attempt to escape or anything like that. You gather your things, you break camp. You find it much easier getting out than you do going back in. just because you spent some time. You're kind of like backtracking. I've already mentioned that the ground is wet and stuff like that. And you will eventually find your way out of the forest without incident. And you will trek across, the farmlands that I told you about, passing hovels, things like that. And it's early on in the day, and you will probably make it back to Antremoor. I'm guessing maybe 10, 11-ish in the morning, something like that. So not quite noonday yet. The gates of Antremoor are open, the ones that you passed going out. And the city is, much as you've seen it before, it is alive with activity. Merchants are, hawking wares in the streets and the square. And you pass by carts and people, and they're about the business of doing the things that they do to eke out their own livings. So, you know the way to the guild hall, and you find your way there just fine. And it is much as you left it the day before. A couple of guards posted outside. What do you do?
Before we go in, we got to have game strategy. Who's going to do talking? Who's going to do confronting? Who's going to go, you make sure the life for life, etc., etc.
I think Luca and Trump should be our faces this round, because you and I kind of irked the lady last time.
That's not my fault. I'm fabulous.
There you go.
I have good persuasion, that's all I can say.
Well, if Astrael wants to jump in there, I'm just saying I don't think it should be Finestra or me, because we've already ticked her off.
You can have, yeah.
She's not.
She
we're
loves
we're
me.
not her
She just
favorite.
doesn't know it yet.
I'll let
Alright.
the young ones take the way.
I like you, venerable monk, Trunk. You should do talking because, you make plenty of sense. And then when sense is lost, you could just pop them in the mouth, and then it's all.
I don't want to pop some more in the mouth yet.
Yeah.
You had your feel already, cool.
So, before we go in, I am going to cast,
In the conversations we've had, Trunk is not at all convinced that we even need to persuade them to the whole, recruiting them for mercenary work. So, if someone wants to convince her on that point, that's going to be all we're good. Because I'm assuming we've had more conversation as we've been walking. FYI.
Okay,
I
so
think Finestra could be like, listen, monk, okay? I know you think about the better good, and it's, we're new to this whole thing. We don't know the ins and outs, but, if we can just be the most diplomatic about both sides, which is like live and let live, and, penitence and forgiveness, or whatever other nice things outside of assassinations, and
I'll be diplomatic. I won't plead their case.
okay.
so just a question real quick. Who was the one who's going to be talking to him? It's me and Astrael,
You
right?
are. Yeah, you and Astrael.
I offered
Okay.
to let Astrael go, so.
Then
They wanna go,
I
go for it.
will I will reach out, place a hand on Astrael again. Gracias, Alia, Vero. And I will cast Eagle Splendor, giving Astrael advantage on all charisma checks, skill checks, and ability checks for the next hour. So she'll have advantage on her persuasion.
okay.
I mean, I can wait outside the door or maybe behind the guest, and I'll stay quiet at the dormouse. And,
Maybe don't bring
I just
Kevin.
want to get paid.
Yeah, they don't seem to like Kevin, but I think we already lost Kevin a couple hours ago because it's like an hour long.
Yeah. So
Let's go.
to make clear, so I think Finestra mentioned something about waiting outside. Is everyone going in, or are just Luca and Astrael going in? How are you planning to do this?
I think we're
Holding the
all going in, but they're the ones doing the talking.
They're the ones doing the talking. Okay, so you approach the guild
I'm
hall.
gonna stay towards the back to make sure nobody tries to run behind us or something, or something happens or whatever.
Okay,
I'm
so
keeping tight on the they don't rattle loose in their last moments.
Likewise.
All right. So when you approach the guild hall, it is the same. There are the same guards outside that you saw yesterday, and the one who was speaking yesterday just sort of pipes up as you're approaching. I see you had luck.
Luck
Congratulations.
had nothing to do with it.
And you've lost none of your number. It's good.
No, but we took one.
Told you we were good. Let's go.
All right.
We're awesome.
We just started flirting.
Go on in. And you get Samara. So the same one who went to get Samara yesterday leaves ahead of you, and you are all permitted entrance into kind of like the main area of the guild hall that you had entered the day before. The area that was kind of like this large meeting space with the, the stand, the podium, the kind of like bench seating and stuff like that. And it's not long before the guard returns with Samara, and she's walking out much like she did, yesterday when you came in there. And just as a reminder, this is a very large, woman, half orc, half elf, some kind of combination of that, interesting features that I've already explained to you. And she looks over your group and sees the Goliath and sees the gnome and sees Aelin, and all of them are bound together. And well done. And you all seem unscathed. I doubted you,
Taken care of.
honestly, but I am impressed.
As we should be.
All right.
Trunk shoots Finestra a look.
right.
High five, Susan.
Now, was this all?
There was one more, but he died.
We have
I'm
a
s-
proposition for you.
Yeah, that's. Oh,
She looks at you, but doesn't say anything.
how about instead of them being hun things, how about they work for you? Yeah.
At least one of these killed one of my men.
And one of their men is dead as well. The debt has been paid. Do you not need more men to hold these walls?
She's quiet at that. Now, why don't you go ahead and make a persuasion roll?
Both of us?
Advantage.
You're working together, so do it at advantage, yeah.
Oh, good. The first one, 22.
Okay. At your saying, do you not need more men to hold these walls? She says, I'm not sure how that would play with my own people. Now, I don't know about them or other mercenaries, but we are quite loyal to one another. That said, we are lacking. And I wish we did have a larger force. I would much rather take you all on, because these are known bandits
Okay, that's a
and
good
killers.
figure eight. Okay. You know,
But nevertheless,
It's another
speak for
one.
team, but I'll sit here and I'll be quiet. Finish. I'm sorry. Excuse me.
nevertheless, it's not my decision to make. I will turn them over to the magisters, and they will decide.
Okay.
Now, regarding taking them on or even giving that as a proposition to the magisters, I would need to speak with my people first. Because I can't imagine them forgiving the death of one of their own. But
How
as
long
I've
is
said,
this talk? 'Cause I'm tired.
Just let me
You should let your men know that they lost half their number defending. Out of character. What's the name of that bridge that they defended?
I just broke a
I didn't give you a name of a bridge, and
Them. Defending a bridge for Lord Coldburn, and then they were stiffed half of their gold. Perhaps they will see some camaraderie in a lord that shafts them out of their money.
alright, you see, she's kind of in thought at you saying that. Even if what you say is true, it is still not my decision to make. I will speak with my own, but ultimately the Magisters will decide their fate. If I speak with my own, and they are willing to forgive this, then I might present it as a possibility for the Magisters. But it still won't be my decision. Now, we'll take them, and you will be paid. So, with that, she will kind of she'll speak to the guard that's there, and kind of ordering him to, get manacles and a couple of other guards, and they will take them into custody, essentially. As I've already mentioned, within this guild hall there is, kind of like a jail and stuff like that. So they go ahead and take them into custody from you, and all the while the 3 that you've taken from the woods say nothing. And they're taken into custody, and as promised, Samara will, tell you, I'll be back with your payment. Wait here. With that, she
Keep
leaves.
your head up. I sing canteen money. You guys be okay.
Out of character, how much money did we take from the bandits? There was 50, and then there was 15. Was there any?
I've got it on a different sheet. I'll have to tell you in a second. So let's go ahead and resolve this first, and then I'll recap that for you. So
I've got it out of
she'll return, and she'll have a bag of coin. Now, as I mentioned, there's 350 for Aelin, and there's an additional 100 for the other 2. And she'll hand it over to either Estrel or Luca. The 2 of you were doing most of the talking. So let's see. She hands it to Luca. All right. She gives Luca the bag. It has 450 gold in it. You don't count it right now, probably. But when you do, you will find that it has 450 gold. Now, will you be staying in Antremoor?
Yes.
For now.
Okay.
Well,
I mean, the show's
At least
called
for
Scourge
tonight.
of Antremoor.
right.
I think I killed the resident.
Mario, I just have
Other side.
I have penciled in next to my notes about this campaign that if you decide to leave Antremoor, the next session is TPK. So it's just.
We're staying.
Red.
Anyway, no. She asks you if you're staying in Antremoor, and there's the bit of conversation. Luca says yes, and Finestra's just kind of like, whatever she was doing.
For tonight at
Well,
least.
what was that, Elizabeth?
For tonight at least.
All right. Well, thank you for returning them. I'm sure that whatever the Magisters decide, justice will be served, no matter what. And if I need to call on you, I hope that you're still around. and I hope that you will consider.
We'll consider it, but we will stay around to see what Magister says about your grades, because we do want to make some justice carried out.
Oh, good, we're talking now, so I'd like to go see the Magisters and talk on their behalf as well. It's a whole new day. I've got another.
Are you saying that
they didn't fight us the whole time?
Are you saying that in character, or are you saying that out of character?
Yeah, in character. In character.
Oh.
I see Finisher talking, so I just pipe up with, yeah, let's go talk to the Magisters and see if we can't help them out a little bit more, just in because we did kill one.
I agree with that. Yes.
I'm going to the hotel because I am tired. Kevin needs to massage my feet. I've got things in my hair. I have no idea what this is. It's nasty. And besides, I deserve a good meal because I'm worth it.
L'Oreal. I do need to shop as well.
That too. I want to go shopping, but I just want to get out of this heat.
Alright, well, it sounds as though you have things to talk amongst yourselves, so perhaps you will get on and get to that now, and then Samara will look towards Kimmin. I don't know that you'll be speaking with the Magisters. For that, you would need to go to Castle Antremoor. And I'm not certain they would permit you there.
Would they permit me?
I'm not sure why they would.
Family, title.
Family and title. Perhaps if you... I think... Oh, yeah. Last session you had presented that. I was thinking...
Yeah.
She didn't know that. But yeah, you had made that known to her last time. Perhaps... So she wouldn't have said that. She would have said, perhaps if you had some business there with them...
Well, yeah, talking about them, the Bennetts.
And dead kids in the woods. How about that?
Sure.
Yes,
Too,
now that
you
we're
need to
sorted
ask
about
them.
everything... Now that we're sorted about everything else, what are you doing about Derek?
Yes.
She just gives Samara a big look up and down.
Okay. Darren?
The blacksmith boy.
Oh, I heard about that.
What are you doing about it?
Well, I heard he was buried. Now, he was found outside of the walls of the city, and as I've previously told you, it's not within my jurisdiction. I will send none of mine out of the walls, unless absolutely necessary. It was a shame, but there's nothing I can do about it.
Well, there's investigating inside the town. Wasn't he taken within the town?
No. What your character... This is out of character. What your character... Because you might not have said that. What your characters had heard during the last session is that he was found near a creek.
Yeah, in a stream. But I
Yeah.
thought he was taken. Was he
So-
taken, well, like,
Oh, you don't know...
where did he disappear from?
All that you heard is that his body was recovered near Mirror Creek, I think is what it is. Yeah. His body was recovered from Mirror Creek. Now, that probably means nothing to you, but as you're bringing this up, and we're kind of condensing some things that you would have gotten from Samara over conversation, but she will tell you that that's outside of the walls of the city.
Okay.
And
You know
she'll
what?
also
I've already had it.
she'll also tell Trunk that, you know, from what she heard, it sounded as though the boy were mauled by something.
I've had it officially with justice. At least we got paid. I'm going to end, and hopefully dead children in the woods are more attention than criminals holed up in some place. But you know, hey, I'm out.
Right.
If this is something you wish to see done, you may do so.
They're willing to help, but you lock them up. It's fine.
We should just go to the
I'm saying that
Masters
to
because
Chunk. If
Yeah.
you, yeah.
Well, if nobody's going to do anything about it.
Well, that's why we should see the Magisters. Now that you
Yeah.
mentioned this, yeah, we should talk to the people who actually are supposed to care about the people in the camp.
Out of character, we can't talk to the Magisters because we're nobodies. I think the only person who
Okay.
can is Astrael.
Yeah.
Possibly, if she could come up with a reasonable.
I could possibly talk, but Finestra probably doesn't care that much. You know.
Well, the Magisters that Seth's talking about is to see that these bandits get picked up or get not killed.
Finestra already got paid, so.
Fair enough.
Yeah, and just to kind of like a couple of things before you move on, just to sort of paint a more accurate picture for you. Essentially, what's going on is you have this force, this mercenary force known as the Bleeders, and they are basically protecting the village of Antremoor. There is also Castle Antremoor, which is kind of basically on lockdown in the absence of Lord Colburn. All right. It has its own small defensive force, that protects, anyone who may have remained behind. So, it's not, I mean, it is quite literally a fortress. You don't just walk in there, and you would probably need a good reason to get in there, is what I'm trying to say. So there.
Can we send a message, like write it in a letter and then have it delivered to them in a timely fashion?
I mean,
I think
that's...
Samara will be more convincing than we.
Yes, so two things there. One, yes, it's plausible that you could try to get some kind of missive to the Magisters at Castle Antremoor. That's not entirely implausible. But two, you know that Samara will already be transporting the prisoners there, and she's told you that she's going to speak with the Bleeders and see how they feel about the idea of taking these on as, to kind of like bolster their own group. And she's told you that if they were okay with it, that she would present it as a possibility to the Magisters. So you got that from the conversation.
Can I write a quick letter of recommendation backing that up so that there's two groups speaking on their behalf instead of just one?
I wouldn't care if Kimmin did that at all whatsoever, but speaking to Set as a player, think about Kimmin and who Kimmin is to these people and whether or not that would really actually matter. Now, Samara's opinion might matter a little bit just because, she's kind of like protecting the town right now. But they have no idea who Kimmin is, So I'm not saying Kimmin couldn't do that. You could certainly do that and ask Samara to deliver it or whomever to deliver it, but just kind of letting as a player, how you might think about it. And even Anna and Astrael, Anna has kind of like this noble background or whatever, but they don't really know her either. It might hold a little bit more weight. But you don't know these Magisters. You're not speaking with them. You're not really sure. And there's also the possibility that Samara speaks with the Bleeders and they don't want to take them on, so she wouldn't even entertain that as a possibility anyway. So there are a couple of factors going on there. So if
So it might not just work.
So I don't want to discourage you. If you want to write a letter or something like that, you may certainly do that.
I'd like to do it just to clear my conscience, I think.
Okay.
And I would
I'm
do it
going
with
to the
Astrael
hotel.
Okay.
if she's considered doing it as well.
All right. So
I'll write a letter.
okay. All right. So Astrael and Kimmin will compose letters and ask Samara to deliver them to the Magisters.
All right, you're dead set on this, but we got better ways we can handle this. But I'm going to hotel now. Me and Kevin are going. Kat, we're gonna have day spa trip. We're gonna have awesome times, and then we're gonna go and go shopping. Don't you like? I got money in a crossbow.
Okay. All right, so Finestra tells them that, and then she's getting ready to depart. Now, just real quick, because I condensed some things, but as Trunk was talking to Samara about the boy being attacked or whatever, ultimately she would kind of leave Trunk with, don't mistake me. I think what happened to the boy was terrible, but there's really nothing I can do about it. I can't investigate what appears to be an attack from a wild animal. It did not happen within the city, and I may not expend my personnel for it. And if this were something you were interested in, I wouldn't even begin to know how to tell you how I could compensate you for that, because I don't know what killed the boy.
Well, I don't think animals just attack people for fun, so I think we should head to the blacksmith then after this and talk to the blacksmith about it and see what they think. It's worth our time to see about it if you're still concerned. Since we can't get to the magisters, we might as well go to the next best thing.
All right. So as I said, it seems like you have some things to talk about. You have my gratitude for returning Aelin and his compatriots. So with that, I'm sure you probably leave the guild hall. Now, just very briefly, amongst yourselves, it seems like you have a couple of things to discuss as to what you might like to do. Kimmin just made a suggestion. So, let's see. Luca, Trunk, Finestra. Eldon, Eldon didn't weigh in that. So, where's Eldon?
He has really not a place in. He doesn't know his way around the civilization that much.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think he would be much help trying to help come and beg for any help in that regard. If there's anyone not going, he'll stay with for now.
Okay. All right. So
If there's shopping, Trunk's gonna offer to go foraging with him.
I do need to shop, but I also need to write the letters.
okay, we're just kind of like sped over the letters. We won't take much game time for doing that. I assume that you could have written them there, given them to Samara, and it probably it wouldn't have taken too long. You sealed it. Kimmin wrote one as well. You asked Samara to deliver them in the event that she would be willing to take them on as part of the Bleeders. So there's that. Now, as I was saying, Kimmin had made a suggestion. So what was everyone's response to that suggestion?
Going to the hotel.
All right. So Finestra wants to go back to the hotel. All right.
If you wish to investigate this murdered boy, that is what we can do next. But I believe Finestra wishes to leave, for to rest first, and I have supplies I must obtain. If it can be delayed till after, I think that works best for everyone.
I have something I can get.
Alright. Fine. Me and Kevin was dead set on head massages, pedicure.
Do that yours.
Do that.
You can go with that.
Yeah, you can do that. Yeah. And just like
Self-care is very important.
We need to divide the gold. And the gold we took from the band.
Yeah.
Okay.
How much did we get from the band?
So we'll do that real quick. So I told you got 450 from Samara. Regarding
Aelin had 50, Gnome had 12, Goliath had 15, and Human had 20.
Human
You
had
have what? 25?
no, the human had 10. I might have misspoken.
Oh.
Sorry. So what you should have gotten, hold on. What you should have gotten is Leona had 12. That's correct. The human had 10. Perhaps I misspoke. The Goliath had 15. Now where the 25 came in, And I can just go ahead and tell you, the small wooden mirror would be worth 25. The bone dice would be worth 25, and the black velvet mask with the silver thread would also be worth 25.
And
And Aelin had 50 gold.
Okay, well, I'd like to keep the scimitar off the human since somebody else snagged Aelin's.
Wait, you're keeping the mask?
oh no, Trunk's not trying to keep it. If you're interested in it, she's happily going to offer it over. I was planning on asking if anyone wanted it at some point. Sorry.
I just like the mask.
Astra wants the
I like
mask. Okay.
I like the fancy sword, but unless somebody else wants the fancy sword.
Wait, when we talk about the mask, are we talking about the Goliath's mask?
That's what they're talking about, yes.
Yeah, I just want to keep it. I like sleeping with it on.
Okay, and then the bandits were 50, 12, and 10.
50, 12, 10, and 15.
15. It's 537 total. Just in gold from the bandits and the payment.
I also have this
I have 587 with the 50 from the 2 items that we're selling.
I didn't include the items in that total.
Yeah, let's include the items except the mask. So 587 divided by 6. Everyone
This
has
is a nice
97.
fine mirror, but I already know what I look like. So cool.
Well, I wanted to see if Finestra wanted the dice first, just because I know.
Oh yeah, I want dice. Please give me the dice.
This is our gold.
You can sell this battle axe. I don't need it. It's too heavy.
War axe.
You can take the
I'll
25
take the
out
dice.
for share if she wants to keep it.
That's true. We should. You know what? Let's do
You
that.
can take the 25 out of my share.
986. Okay, hold on. I got it.
Yeah, I'm
Instead of
keeping
the
the
total.
sword.
It
Yeah,
just
I'm
means
keeping
some
I
the
people
want
will
the
get less,
dice.
but they get to keep the items.
Yeah. I'm doing it right now. So everyone got
Take the 25 out of my
102
share.
gold except Finestra and Austria, who got 77 gold. The rest of us got
Okay.
102.
I'm okay with 77.
Monk will offer the difference. Or now you've got me doing it, RJ.
I apologize.
You forgot difference.
Oh, look at these dice. Look how cool they look.
Trunk will offer the difference to Stereo.
You counted the great axe, right?
Yeah, okay, so a couple of things. Number one, I normally kind of like close our sessions down around 11 Eastern time, and we're approaching that. So I understand that several of you kind of have some shopping that you would like to do. Instead of like playing that out, let's take care of that off stream. You can kind of tell me what you want to buy, and we'll conduct that off stream. Now, in terms of anything else, at this point we're only about 17. At this point we're only about 17 minutes left of normal stream time. So I think it would make for a good stopping point right here in terms of like if you were really going to talk to the blacksmith or you had some other thing that you wanted to do. We should probably pick up next time with that, just so as not to interrupt it. Okay. So.
Okay, so for the blacksmith thing next time, this time, could we have our herbalist kit party where we're learning? Those of us who don't know how to use the herbalism kit can learn from those who have it.
Yeah, so in terms of like you had mentioned off stream that you wanted to learn languages and learn how to use herbalism kits and stuff like that. You can go ahead and say that your characters are starting to work with one another to try to develop these skills. It's not like anything you're going to be proficient in next time because it takes, as I've mentioned before, like 250 days or something like that of, practicing daily to really gain the proficiency in it. Unless you hit 4th level and take the skilled proficiency or skilled feat, So, but those are things we can talk about off stream. But you may certainly say that your characters are starting to work with one another. If the other characters are willing to teach those skills, you can kind of start training one another. So there's that. Before we say our goodbyes tonight, is there anything like that anyone wanted to accomplish or had any other questions about or anything like that?
No.
I mean, just
Go ahead, Christy.
go ahead. Oh, basically, just in the future, Finestra would probably like to talk to the tavern owner, Orland, about like possibly being employed or something.
Okay.
Because the bugbear was terrible. Or she can play music or dance or something so she can get room and board, and possibly talk about her assistants like the Silver Mask dude and the Mushroom Man. Everybody's part of my entourage, and I need them.
Okay, all right. So, in terms of that, well, as I mentioned, in terms of like buying things and stuff like that, let's handle that off stream. Speaking to Orlin at the tavern, let's have you do that in character, so you can have that bit of RP with him or whatever. So I think we'll go ahead and stop here for tonight. It's a good stopping point, and tentatively, it seems like your party is in agreement to go speak with the blacksmith regarding the death of his son. Next session. Did I understand that correctly? So in that case, we'll pick up with you all having, rested a night at the tavern. So if you will, go ahead and subtract, about a gold's piece for whatever meal you have there in your night's stay. Then that will already be taken care of for next time. And we'll just pick up probably the following day with you all getting ready to go speak with the blacksmith. Okay? Does that sound like a plan?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
All right.
I wanted to probably ritual cast Find Familiar in the morning or night or something.
Okay. All right. So we'll chat about that off stream. So, anybody have anything they want to plug or say before we go? David?
Nothing from my side.
Okay.
Just enjoying.
I'm good.
All right. Elizabeth?
Thank you for coming. This is awesome.
All right.
That's all I got.
Set.
Same thing. Thanks for coming. And if I could plug us to other people, I would. But we're here.
Right. Christy?
Woohoo! Level 3. What's up?
Yes, you are all a level 3 now. So, cool.
I got my school.
Anna?
Nothing.
All right. And Mario?
Well, now I feel weird plugging something that no one else did, but I'm Mario Gillis. You can find more of me at Twitter at Lights Camera Initiative, and you can find more of me on my YouTube channel named the same thing. I think recently we just had our most recent episode of our Curse of Strahd run come out, so check that out. My character gets permanently blinded, and as a wizard, that is not a good thing. Yeah, it's pretty rough. So, yeah.
All right, cool. Well, don't feel too bad about plugging yourself, because I'm going to plug myself right now. So, I am RJ Cresswell. You can find me on Twitter at RJ_Cresswell, where I do giveaways and write about Dungeons and Dragons and occasionally post painted minis or otherwise, or things related to Dungeons and Dragons otherwise. I do this stream, the Tainted Lands, Scourge of Antremoor. I also have a stream on Monday nights, Tainted Lands, Shadows of the City, and both streams run at 8 p.m. Eastern. And if you're watching this, I assume you probably already know that. And yeah, that's about it for tonight. If you happen to have tuned in and stuck it out with us, we appreciate it. If you just came in for a little while, we also appreciate it. If you're looking at us on YouTube later, we sincerely appreciate it. And most of all, I appreciate all of you showing up and playing tonight. We had our first no combat, all role play session, which is always kind of cool, I think, when you can manage to pull that off. So anyway, thank you all very much for joining me tonight, and I'll plan on seeing you next Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern for session 4. All right. Good night, everyone.
See ya.
Bye.